All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the MFC Approach podcast. It has been a minute, but I'm excited and glad to get these going again. And our guest today is actually a guest we've had on before, and somebody who I admire, look up to a lot, and have learned a ton from, and that is Jeff Hoehn. So, Jeff, thanks so much for being here, man.
Dude, absolutely. And that was, I just found out how close we are by you getting my last name right. So you passed that. So good job. But yeah, dude, I think last time I was on your podcast, I had to do it in my in-laws upstairs because we were in the process of moving. So I'm actually in my actual home, and my mic is working this time. So yep, looking forward to chatting with you, dude.
Awesome. Yeah, I can hear you crystal clear. So awesome, dude. Real quick. So Jeff you've been here before. Just anybody who hasn't, isn't familiar with you, would definitely encourage everybody to check out Jeff's Instagram page. Ton of value, ton of content there that is just so valuable for anybody who's looking to transform, their health and their life. So would definitely encourage that. But maybe Jeff, let's give everybody a little bit more detail. Like how long have you been coaching for now? And how did you kind of get into it maybe?
Yeah. Started coaching, probably 2017-ish, somewhere around there, which is kind of crazy to think now that it's 2025. Yeah. It feels like a while, but it also doesn't. So it's weird. I feel like this last 5 to 10 years has just kind of flown by, but yeah. So that's when I started. I've always, but before that I was a gym manager. So I've been in the gym kind of industry, fitness industry for a while. I got that right out of college. So 2014-ish. And then before that, I obviously was into weight training for myself, exercise, building muscle. Since I started lifting weights when I was 13, 14, I had my dad's weights. And so that was when I got introduced to it, worked out throughout high school, and then, really got into it on my own in college. So early 20s. And then, just since then, dude, I just freaking love learning about the body. We've had this conversation multiple times, right? Where I'm just dude, I just love learning about the body and learning about these things. I could just, if literally that would be my job, that's what I would do all day, is just learn about building muscle, improving cardiovascular fitness, metabolism. That's what I would do. Literally last night I was just having this I was just thinking about this. There's just so many, there's just for me, there's just so many things out there, obviously on the internet, to where you can just keep learning more. And so it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because it's hard to just okay, what are the things I want to focus on and learn, right? For example, there's another book coming out in March. I'm I got to get that. And I just got a new book the other day. So it's just I gotta slow myself down. But yeah, man, that's kind of a little bit of a background there if anyone isn't familiar with me.
I love it. And I was going to say too, just kind of based off of, your history of exercise and fitness and nutrition and stuff. Some of my favorite posts of yours are the ones where you talk about kind of your journey and your process. Something that I've actually tried to be a little more transparent with as well in some of my content. But again, for anybody who hasn't checked it out, those are some of my favorite posts, just because they're so relatable and so applicable. And oftentimes I feel like our focus when we are, wanting to improve our health isn't necessarily in the best place. It might not be, that it's not in the right place, but maybe not in the most optimal or best place. And that's something, again, if it's not clear already, guys, Jeff is actually my coach. He's my trainer. And have gotten so much value from working with you, Jeff, because you have kind of opened my eyes to some of those things of what are we focusing on? What really is going to make a lasting impact? While my goal hasn't ever really changed, I'll say my goal has always been to just be as big and as strong as I possibly can be. However, my approach to that hasn't always been the best, especially, in my early 20s or even late 20s, going to college and stuff. Sleep was never a priority. And still to this day, I probably could prioritize sleep a little bit more. But just some of those aspects of health that I don't feel like we always take into consideration. And so again, it's even though somebody may not have the wrong intentions when it comes to their health, they're probably not focusing on some of the things that are going to make a lasting impact.
Yeah. Well, so this actually, I feel like it's kind of, maybe so people kind of have an understanding of how I got to this too, right? Because like you just kind of brought up how, in your 20s, you, again, it's like get big and strong, right? So maybe if I kind of go over my kind of story first, that will kind of lead people into, then we can kind of chat about, what things are important. But I think if I kind of explain that, I think that'll be super helpful for people to get an idea. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was very similar, right? Like I talked about, I was working out, and always working out. And so for me, it was always kind of aesthetic based. And so like, I wanted to, I'm a short guy. So like, for me, it's like, hey, I want to, work around that by building some muscle. And so, again, to go back to my kind of college days, like I said, I was short, skinny, lifted weights, put on some muscle, but then I kind of hit this plateau where like, again, I wanted to be bigger. I remember seeing a guy from Muscle Farm. He was one of their athletes, Laurent Landry. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that or anything, but he's just like super jacked. And like, I was like, man, I want to freaking look like that. And, he's like 220 pounds, probably 5 to 10% body fat, just a freak. And I wanted to be like that. Right. But I'm also 5'7", I got maybe above average genetics, nothing crazy. And so for me, everyone said, what was the thing? Hey, you got to eat big. You got to eat big to get big. So like, for me, it was all about just like, I was forcing a look, right? Like I wanted to add muscle, but I wanted to do it super quick. And so like, what did I do? I just ate, as much as I could. This was during college. So there was also weekends where I was, binge drinking as well too, like on, Friday and Saturday, right? I'd have a good amount, that messes with your sleep. Obviously not great from that perspective, from a sleep perspective. So that was off. I was just shoveling food in. Like every time I wanted I get on the scale, like I had to see it go up. And if I didn't, I was like, man, I got to start eating more. So, I went from probably 140 to maybe 190-ish in a span of, year and a half, 2 years, somewhere around there. So gained a pretty good amount of weight. I remember seeing like 190. I was like, holy crap. All right, I'm 190. But, I also didn't really like the way I looked at that point, right? I had, extra body fat. I looked like with my clothes on, I looked buffer, but, shirt off, I had more body fat than I wanted, had skin issues, right? I remember being in college, dude, and like, there were times where like I was super embarrassed to like go to class and like go out because I had acne on my face and on my back, and then that led to again continuing to want to just add more muscle, and I ran into shoulder issues, right? So like I took this kind of looks first approach where I was trying to force that, but I was overlooking like the health side of things. In that time in your 20s, you're not really thinking about that stuff. It's not super important to you. Again, you just you see people online and you want to look like them, and so I knew that just. Obviously looking back now, a lot of those things, and I had poor gut health as well too, right? Like bloating, really bad gas. Like there would be times when I was out and I like was like super uncomfortable from that perspective. And these are things that, again, like health and fitness, it should improve our life, not make it worse. And again, my overall, I just didn't feel good overall, even though I was exercising and doing all those things. Right. And so again, as I got into health and fitness, like helping other people out, I was able to kind of reflect on my story and think back on that. And, again, see that just obviously wasn't the best way to go about it. So that's kind of my background. And, again, this to also tie all this into kind of how I went down this journey of, looking at like kind of having a health first approach. I also took a course, and because I was just frustrated with like clients that, again, they were exercising, they were doing their nutrition, but like they weren't seeing the change that, they wanted. Right. And, come to find out, again, obviously calories are important, like your macros are important and exercising is important. But, again, if we're not taking care of everything else, and we'll talk about what that is, you're probably not going to see the results that you want to see. And, I think a lot of people just kind of overlook what their body's telling them, and they just kind of try to push through because that's, what they see on social media, right? You just need to eat less. You just need to move more. And again, that's good advice for a lot of people, but, we need to go layer deeper than that. And so that's kind of my background and how I got to this point.
So I want to ask just like one follow-up question, Jeff. So, I mean, out of that experience, was there any any positive effect that you had on your overall health, do you think, or was it all kind of negative stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it got me to I love going to the gym. I still do. I stayed consistent with that. And I think, exercising and, building some muscle, like that's going to be helpful from like a long-term perspective. Right. And just getting to the gym, like that's good for your mental health. Right. And all the other benefits of exercise. So no, it wasn't like all for a waste, but again, my approach was just, trying to force that kind of that looks first approach. And usually when you do that, usually things down the line kind of get out of whack. So no, it wasn't a waste, but and it built some good habits. It's just, again, I could have saved myself a lot of time and and everything like that.
Yeah. And I guess I only asked that because, I mean, very similar experience on my end, right? Like that was, I mean, going to the gym, eating a ton of food, like trying to put on as much size as I could. I feel fortunate that I never got to a point, and who knows like what to attribute it to, but it's like I never got to a point where I had those really obvious signs, of like unhealthiness. Like, I mean, you mentioned just like the acne and like the constant discomfort in your stomach. Like I've definitely had moments of like some of those things, but I feel like overall I've been pretty fortunate to avoid some of that stuff. And again, I don't really know what to attribute that to, because a lot of the time that I've spent on my journey has been really ignorant in a lot of ways. Like I just those basic things, like lift heavy, eat a ton of food, and that's it, man. Like that's it. And so I'm excited though to kind of dive into it a little bit more and, hear what some of the things are that you would maybe help people or encourage people to prioritize versus just the things that we think about, the obvious things, right? Like January 1st comes, the gyms are packed, everybody's like trying to eat healthier and stuff. It's like, okay, cool. But, we're a month into this year. Chances are people are probably kind of on the brink of giving up on some of these goals and like some of the things that they want to prioritize, their health. So I'm curious, what would you tell somebody in that situation? Like, hey, let's maybe take a step back and look at some of these other things that we should be prioritizing as well.
Well, so yeah. So I think first, like a lot of this usually is just, hey, go in and exercise. Right. So I think that if we're going to kind of start the pillar here, it's like having some, like, instead of thinking of it as exercise, maybe think of it as training and like have some sort of game plan. Like what are you trying to get out of your training? Right. I think too many people, when they want to get into like a routine, it's just kind of random, right? It's like, oh, hey, so-and-so says to lift weights, so I'm just going to go and lift weights. And again, that's good. Like we talked about, like you're building that habit. That's going to be good for you. But if you're just kind of like, we're all busy, we have a ton of time, or we don't have a ton of time. It's like, your body's going to adapt to what you do to it. So, you want to try to make sure that that's in line. Do you have something? Did you?
I was just going to say, like, I think something too, like a lot of times what the focus is for people is like, I want to go and burn as many calories as I possibly can. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's when you get the people who are really trying to sweat as much as they can on cardio equipment and stuff. And again, is that bad? Not necessarily, but at the same time too, it's maybe not the most optimal thing.
Yeah, it's not bad, but you're just kind of aimless with what you're doing. So it's like hard to sustain long term, and then you kind of get in this like, why am I doing this? And so again, my thought is like, hey, if we can have some structure around that, and like again, understanding that your body will adapt to what you do to it. So again, we want to send that right stimulus. So like figuring out what your main goal is, like, what are you trying to get out of all this, right? I think that's super important, but having some structure with your training, right? And so like you said there, you're not just going to just like sweat as much as possible. Again, that's fine. But again, at some point it's like, you're going to find yourself spinning your wheels. And so if that's all you do, right? So let's say that's all you do. Again, you're going to see an improvement in your overall health, but, and you may see some small body comp changes depending on what you were doing before, but at some point, that's going to slow down if that's all you do, right? So again, we want to be structured with that. So then we also want to have focus on other things, right? Because again, in the research, like if somebody just exercises, and again, their main goal is weight loss, you'll see a little bit of weight loss off the bat because especially if you went from doing nothing, but at some point, just exercising to lose weight, you're not going to see the results that you want to see, right? And a lot of it comes down to people end up overeating, or again, they're not necessarily sending the right signal to their body, right? So again, we want to make sure that we have other things in place. So I think the first thing is like making sure that your training it has structure to it, and there's a goal of what you're trying to get. So then that way, again, it's like you're making use of the limited time that you do have. because that's what everybody wants. You know, we don't have time to waste. So it's like, again, we want to be structured with that. So again, making, and then having that structure, but again, making sure that you have ways to know that you're progressing in that. Again, does everybody have to do that? No, but again, if we're going to dedicate that time to it, I think it's important to at least spend some time learning how to do that, right? So that's the first thing there, kind of at the base of the pyramid with that. And then we have strategic nutrition. Okay, so we know if we want to change our body, there's going to be a huge nutrition component to it, right? So again, yes, like obviously, like looking at your calories, looking at your macros, those are going to be important, and those are really good things to learn. But also within nutrition, it's making sure that you're eating in the right amount for what your goal is. So again, this is why I said initially, like it's super important to figure out like what your goal is. And again, if you're on your own, this is a little bit harder, but again, having somebody let you know, like, hey, here's where I think you need to go versus like, hey, you just need to lose weight. Like, do you need to actually lose weight, or do you also maybe need to add some muscle in the process, right? And I think most people probably need a combination of both. But again, making sure that, you know, again, if your goal is like weight loss, you're not just eating less, you're also like making sure that you're eating the right foods, making sure you're still fueling your body enough to where, you know, you go on a crash diet, you lose weight in 3 weeks, but then you also feel terrible. Your training starts to suffer. You absolutely hate what you're doing. You're missing out on a ton of micronutrients. Your protein's low. Again, that's not going to be something that lasts, right? So it's taking that, like taking it a layer deeper and making sure that you're fueling your body as well too, to feel good, because that's super important as well too, versus, you know, just looking at your macros or just eating less or just quote unquote eating clean, right? There. So those are some big things there that kind of with that. And then also like, you know, what kind of foods, you know, do sit well with you, right? We talked about gut health on our call today. Like what foods sit well with you? Do certain ones mess with your gut, you know, things like that. So looking into that. So that's kind of like a layer deeper there of just, oh, hey, eat less.
Yeah. I muted myself for a minute, man. The kids just got home, and it was every time I know it's going to be a madhouse. So I just wanted to mute myself for a second. But I want to just, I think one of the things that's so just that I want to add to that is like extreme is not the answer. Like extreme dieting is not the answer, whether it be you cutting out carbs completely or doing like a keto based diet or, you know, anything like that. Like, not to say that those things can't work, because I've seen those things work for people, but the times that I've seen that also turn into a rapid fat gain as well, as soon as they stop doing that, like that's one of the things I guess I just wanted to highlight is like, to be healthy, to take a healthy approach, you don't have to take an extreme approach on nutrition. And that's, I just think that's one of the things that I see most often people kind of think they need to do, but really it doesn't end up serving them long term.
Yeah, and I think with that, I think if you have some guidance in somebody that can kind of help you with that, like I think you can be, this doesn't mean you have to be like super slow with your weight loss or like like you can be somewhat aggressive, but you just have to make sure that you're fueling yourself properly. So and that's where most people get themselves wrong when they try to like crash diet, right? They just eat less and then they eat 800 calories a day, and it's like, yeah, you're going to lose weight, but you're also, you know, not getting any protein. You know, you're missing out on other like vitamins and minerals that you need to help you feel good. And then that's where you see that person give up. And then, like you said there, they end up just kind of going back to what they were doing before, because now they're super hungry, and then they gain a bunch of body fat after. So you can be somewhat aggressive if you want. You just have to be smart with your approach versus just kind of winging it, right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So, no, I like that a lot, and I appreciate the clarification there. And so, anyways, what would be the next thing you would say that somebody needs to focus on?
Okay, so we have training. Like, again, we want structured training. We want it to have a purpose and a goal, right? Again, whatever that is for you. So you're not just going in and winging it. Again, we talked about how that can work, but again, that's at some point that's going to you're going to end up spinning your wheels, and you're going to be less motivated. Nutrition, again, we want to make sure that it's geared towards what you specifically need, and not just, hey, you need to eat less, right? Yeah. So then the next big one here is making sure that we're optimizing our movement overall. Okay, and so what that means is your hour session in the gym is important, but we also don't want that now to lead to you not doing anything. Like, you just go home and sit the rest of the day, and then you sit at work. You know, you're like, you don't get any other movement in. There's a ton of benefit of staying active throughout the day, not only from a body composition standpoint, but also just a mental health, cognitive standpoint. I'm sure we've all been there where we've had those days where we haven't moved, or we've just kind of laid around all day, and you almost feel worse than you normally would, right? And I always think back to those days that I felt terrible, and I was like, man, those were days that I just didn't move at all, right? So again, we want to try to get some movement outside the gym. You can do this via like steps. You could just make sure you're just finding ways to get up and get moving throughout the day. If you're sitting for more than like an hour, maybe you get up and just kind of move around, do something in the house, just finding ways to stay more active, playing with your kids. Again, just kind of finding ways to stay more active throughout the day. I think if you can track steps, I think anywhere from like 6 to 10K a day is perfect. And also another benefit of like staying active too is in the research, they've shown that like if you're less than like say 6 to 8K steps per day, you kind of get this dysregulation of your appetite. So you almost become more hungry because of that. Whereas if we can stay active, our appetite gets regulated to how much we actually need to eat. So kind of another extra benefit there of staying active. And again, from a gut health perspective, getting up and get moving after a meal can help with digestion. And just from like a blood sugar, glucose management standpoint, staying active is going to help with that as well too. So that's one piece that I feel like people miss out on, right? They do their hour training session or exercise, and then that's all they do for the day, and they don't move at all. And people are really missing out on a ton of overall health and body composition benefits by not staying active throughout the day.
Yeah. And I love that nowhere in there did you say you want to move more to burn more calories. Like you move more for just like overall body regulation and function. And I freaking love that, man. Again, I feel like that's one thing that I have just experienced and seen is like we get so hung up on the fact that we want to lose fat that we just want to burn calories as much as possible. And that's not what really any of this is about. It's more so about just like proper function of our body and helping it regulate itself. So I love that.
Well, and what's awesome too, and again, this comes back, like if you focus on it for those reasons, you will expend more energy throughout the day. So you will burn more calories as kind of a side effect, right? But we're doing it for those reasons, not like you said, to burn calories. And that's to me where it's super important to do that. So I'm glad you brought up the burning calorie side of things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, man. Cool. Sorry if you guys can hear the kids in the background screaming. They are uncontrollable.
Well, this also kind of, with the movement too, this also kind of comes to, I'll kind of tie this in with the next kind of pillar, but also, when you move and stuff like that's where you can kind of clear your mind, but you also, a lot of times we can do it outside, and getting outside is super important for our overall health as well too. And again, that's kind of, so you're kind of killing two birds with one stone there with that. So the next kind of pillar, and I call it like kind of lifestyle optimization, okay? Because this is kind of, I feel like what you brought up initially of like, what are some things that, again, you said you needed to work on, but also just most people kind of overlook, right?
Yeah.
And it is optimizing our lifestyle. And what does that mean? So we're looking at things like your sleep, your circadian hygiene, which I'll talk about, stress management, and those are kind of the main lifestyle things, but also just like the environments that you put yourself in. I think a lot of people don't really realize your environment is huge. And if that's off, again, whether it's the people you are around a lot, or again, what you're around at work, like that's going to have a huge impact on your body composition and overall health, right? And mental health as well too. So, optimizing the environment side of things, I think is super important, because this is so important because in today's world, if we're not careful with it, our environment's designed to just make us unhealthy in a way, right? Like, again, we have social media where if you're not careful with it, like all of a sudden you can find yourself scrolling for 2 hours. Again, from a mental health standpoint, that's not going to be great, right? Food, right? Food's designed to get you to eat more, and you end up just consuming way too many calories. TV, right? Bright lights, all these things are just like, if we're not careful with it, it's going to lead to unhealthy habits. It's like we're just in a completely different environment now than we've been in our entire existence as humans, right? And so we need to learn how to work with it and work with that versus against it. And this is just, again, like I said, if we're not aware of these things, these get out of whack, and so you have to kind of go out of your way to do it. So let's talk sleep, right? First one, sleep. Like, it's so easy to in today's, like, we're inside, we don't get much sunlight. We have a bunch of blue light, which can mess with your sleep. You can work as late as you want. You can sit on your phone as late as you want. And these are all going to be things that are going to impact your sleep. And if sleep's off, you're going to be hungrier. Your hormones are going to get messed up. You're going to have lower motivation. So it's like, yes, there's direct effects of all this, but there's also indirect effects of some of these being out of whack. So again, sleep is a huge one that I see. And again, it's, yes, we want to get, 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep, but it's also setting ourselves up for good sleep too. I think people overlook the sleep quality side of things. So again, it's staying somewhat consistent with your sleep and wake times. Again, avoiding too much blue light late at night, having a nice little wind down routine to where you're not like just doing something that's stimulating and then trying to go to sleep. Again, that's going to be super hard, getting something that winds you down at night. Avoiding, alcohol and caffeine like too late in the day, getting some sunlight throughout the day, and then also getting some light, some sunlight as early as you can in the day. Like these are going to be super helpful things to help with your sleep and your circadian rhythm, your circadian hygiene. I don't know how deep you want me to go into that. I don't know if you have any questions on the sleep side before I dive into the stress, but yeah.
No, I mean, we can maybe just kind of make us all familiar with the circadian rhythm and stuff. But I think overall, man, that message right there is one that we all could hear or need to hear. Because again, dude, like this is something I've been working on with you, is like, I'm trying to optimize my sleep. I'm trying to get better sleep, and definitely trying to make some adjustments and changes, to my routine. And I will say, like, I do feel like I've noticed a difference in just, simply for me, it's just been trying to get to bed a little bit earlier, and then eliminating the screen time is, man, it's a freaking tough one. It's such a habit for me at this point that it's something that it's going to require a lot of just intentionality and stuff. And with everything we're talking about, dude, like, I think that's the word that just describes all this so perfectly, is just, you got to be intentional, right? And you gotta make those conscious decisions, because it's so easy just to get sucked into all of those things you mentioned. Like it can be totally innocent and not intentional at all, but it's like, man, the world we live in is just, it's designed that way.
We live in great times, but we live in a world now where you have to learn how to moderate and abstain from things. And again, this has been completely different than how we evolved, right? When we evolved, it was like, I actually reading a book now where it talks about like the big issues that were, at play for most of our existence, right? It was plagues. So like, again, disease, stuff like that. We don't really have to like worry about, like, yes, we still have to worry about it, but now it's like more disease from the unhealthy lifestyle than anything. Right. And then we also, disease in terms of like, you don't have to worry about like the flu or something like that. Like it's all manageable type stuff. And disease in terms of, now we have diseases of like old age. So it's kind of like weird how it's completely different. War, we don't really have to worry about war as much as we did, back in the day. Right. Again, that's another thing that we don't have to worry about. And then the other thing is just food. Like we don't have to worry, like, if you look back in time, as like people didn't get enough food. So it was like figuring out how to make sure you got enough food. Whereas like today, it's the complete opposite. We get too much food and we get sick because of that. So it's just completely changed. It's just crazy how, to think of it from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even like 50 years ago, it's like, we're not even talking that long ago. Like things have evolved like at such a rapid pace that it's interesting. So
and that's why I think this stuff is so important, because again, if you like I've been saying throughout this pillar, it's like, if you just do how you feel and how an environment is, it's going to lead to unhealthy, just a misalignment of how our body works and how it naturally works. Again, the sleep, right? I mean, think back in the day when we evolved, and like you said, not even that long ago, it's like you didn't have bright lights all the time, right? Like you went to bed probably when it got dark, and again, maybe not perfectly, but you didn't have anything to mess that up. Whereas now it's like TV, everything. It's so easy to look at that stuff late at night, and it impacts your sleep, and then you get poor sleep, and now the next day you got brain fog, you have lower motivation, you're hungry, you don't feel like exercising, and it's just this kind of vicious cycle from there.
It's wild, man. It really is.
So that's the sleep side of stuff there. And I guess with the circadian rhythm, again, it's just how our body runs on a circadian clock, right? So again, usually in the morning, it's a little bit different than what it is at night. And so every process throughout the body basically runs on a circadian rhythm. And so when we get that out of whack, our body is just going to be less robust. Like we're just going to have less robustness in general. We're going to be less resilient to anything, right? You and I talked about this when your circadian rhythm starts to get out of whack. It's like every little thing that you do, it kind of has a bigger impact on you, right? So, yeah. And then on top of it, as you age, it gets even worse, right? So when you're 20, you can get away with a lot of this stuff. It's not really going to have a huge impact. But once you get in your 30s, 40s, and beyond, this stuff is really going to start to impact you more. And again, it's this vicious cycle where the more it's impacted, the more it's just going to continue to trickle down that way, and you're going to notice these things, right? So, again,
Jeff, do you feel like the older you get, the more it does impact you? Or I'm trying to think of how to phrase that correctly. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's your circadian rhythm is less robust as you age. So these things are going to have larger impacts on you as you age. And then there's obviously genetics that play into it as well too, right? Like that's something we need to think about. Yeah. Some people are just going to have less of an impact. Like you're always going to have those people that like they could do so many like quote unquote unhealthy things, and it's going to impact them less than somebody else, right? So you do kind of need to know yourself. But I think of your circadian rhythm as like your base of like, if we can get that on check, everything is going to just work more efficiently and effectively. You're almost going to feel like your body composition change is going to, if we can dial in this lifestyle stuff, it's almost going to feel more downhill versus like uphill, right? That's the best way I can describe it, is when this stuff is off, for every little bit that you need to change, you're just feeling like you're just grinding, right? And it just gets old. Like it's draining to feel like you need to like do all these things to not really see any change. And then what happens? Your motivation goes down, and then you end up, not wanting to stick with anything. But again, these things are so easy to overlook. And then if you have kids, again, it makes it super hard to manage this. You have a full-time job, like all these things start to kind of add up, which I don't know if you have any questions on the circadian rhythm side of things, but that also leads into the stress component as well too.
Now we can dive into that. I mean, I did have a thought come to my head and then it just totally left me, man. So maybe it'll come back to me as you kind of talk about the stress side of things a little more.
Yeah. So stress is another part of the lifestyle optimization. Again, we live in this environment where stress is kind of a buzzword now, right? Like stress is your perceived stress of like, you feel stressed out, like, hey, my boss yelled at me, or hey, I don't like my boss. And like, that's perceived stress, right? Or hey, you get mad at somebody like in traffic, or again, you get in a fight with your spouse. Like that's like perceived stress, right? And that is one form of stress, but there's also stress in terms of like, we talk about your circadian rhythm. If that's out of whack, like that's a stressor on the body. Having too high body fat levels, like that's a stressor on the body. And so we have that. And then like people just live in this environment where, again, it's like, there's just constant stress. Like we never have time to like decompress and get into this parasympathetic state, which is like more of your rest and digest kind of state. And so again, these things just add up over time, right? And we only have so much that we can recover from. And then on top of it, it impacts your sleep. And so you don't get great sleep. And then your sleep impacts how resilient you are to the stress, right? So again, these things all kind of go hand in hand. There with that. So again, this is a huge thing. And so I think it's one, we live in this environment where we have constant stressors, again, perceived stress, but then also stressors on the body. Like I said, circadian misalignment, poor sleep, high body fat levels. Those are all stressors on the body. And then we also have people don't manage their stress in healthy ways, right? They try to manage their stress through, again, like scrolling social media, through food, through alcohol, right? Drugs. Or you have some people that they manage their stress through like high intense exercise, which again, that's not like that's a good stressor on the body, but we don't want that to be our only form of stress management, because that's just adding more stress to the body. And when the body is stressed like that, body composition change is just going to be super hard. Your body is going to try to just make sure it gets rid of that stress more than anything. And so it's not going to want to, add muscle or lose body fat in these conditions. And again, the modern environment is set up for just this high stress lifestyle. If again, you're not going out of your way to lower that.
Holy cow. I don't know why it's never really clicked in my head like that before, but it's just like the different kinds of stress is really what stood out to me, because I mean, even in conversations with my clients, like I'll fully admit, a lot of times we focus on those external stressors, like work being crazy or whatever it may be, at home or anything like that. But yeah, man, like the stressors that are occurring just from our behaviors is, and it's nice to think like those things are within our control though, right? Like we can make a difference there. But yeah, it definitely requires intentionality.
Well, and also like I always want to make this known too. This doesn't mean you don't want any stress. Like we do
Right.
want some stress, because you do have some people that have like absolutely no stress, and that leads to issues, right? Like our body, like we do want to have some stress. So the goal isn't to get rid of all stress. It's like you said there, we want to have healthier ways to manage it, but we also want to reduce unnecessary stressors. And again, whether that be, getting less mad at certain things, but then again, also like, hey, can you put less stress on the body by dialing in your sleep, right? Or is it, hey, dropping a little bit of body fat potentially, right? Like those are all things that we can, that are in our control there. So again, it's not, we don't want any stress, but we just want to make sure we learn how to manage it. And again, like it's just finding things to, the best way I can describe this is like just finding things that get you to like dial back and like just slow down, right? So again, this could be breath work. It could be prayer. It could be walking outside, for a walk, getting in nature. It can be hanging out with your loved ones, right? It can be like doing like puzzles or like listening to calming music. It can be doing brain dumps, whatever it is, like journaling. We just want to find ways to slow down and to just kind of breathe deep and just get out of your head for a little bit, right? Again, if we can find more ways to do that, I think that's super helpful there. And again, it will help with everything. And also again, too, the more stress you have, like the more you get stressed out about little things, right? So again, it's just a vicious cycle with all this.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. All right. The last one.
Yep. So that's a lifestyle. So real quick on that, just to sum that up, that's the lifestyle. Like those are things that people are going to listen to and be like, oh yeah, I'm fine with that. But I'm telling you, if you can work on those in combination, your efforts towards your body composition change are going to be, it's just going to, again, it's going to feel like you're going downhill more so than going uphill with all this. So the last thing again is going to be your mindset. Okay. So this is the other big thing here is just your mindset towards everything, right? Like not only developing mental resilience, but also just a bulletproof mindset, right? Like to help you stay consistent, navigate challenges, and to make this, the transformation stick, right? So again, whether it's learning to take responsibility, right? A lot of people, again, usually try to blame things on other people or circumstances or whatever it is, but like taking responsibility, getting away from that all or nothing mindset, right? Like these are some big ones that I commonly see. So again, developing your mindset is super important, right? Like I know for you, these are things that you and I talk about all the time, right? Whether it comes to your business or your training is kind of your mindset around certain things, right? So I'm sure that I don't know if you want to kind of describe what that's been like for you on the mindset side of things, but
for sure, man. And I mean, I just think there is always going to be an excuse or a reason why you don't do something, I mean, you kind of touched on that already, but I mean, again, it's like the obvious one is like, oh man, I didn't get to the gym for all my training sessions this week. But I think even more importantly, man, is like the lifestyle changes that you were just talking about. Like there will always be a reason for me to not go to bed on time, to, look at my phone if I want to, or whatever it may be. And so I think until like we truly sit down and, own what we can own and control, then it's like, nothing is ever going to change, dude. Like I think, what's her name? Mel Robbins. One of her famous quotes that I freaking love is like, nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to make you go to the gym. Nobody's coming to make you eat the healthy foods. Nobody's coming to do anything for you. It's like, and so, and working through that with you, man, and just recognizing and realizing where I do need to maybe take a little bit more ownership and change my mentality and mindset around. Like, I do feel like I'm noticing drastic changes in my physique and my body, but also just in, my mental clarity and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's been huge.
Yeah, because like again, it's like how you handle setbacks, how you handle failures, because again, those things are going to happen, and if that's like something that you don't deal well with, that's going to be something that's going to continue to pop up and be a limiting factor in terms of you changing your body, right? Because again, as you know, like in life, like there's going to be some failures, there's going to be things that pop up. So being adaptable like that and learning how to be adaptable and again, how you handle failure, like it's just super important. And again, something overlooked there. So yeah, man, it's again, it's an easy to overlook thing. But I feel like with a lot of clients, that's again a huge part of the process. Like for example, I have a client who, you know, he sees good results for a little bit of time, but then like he gets in this all or nothing mindset. And I just keep telling him like, that's going to be something that, you know, until we tackle that root cause of that, like you're going to keep kind of running into those issues with that. So, but then also understanding too, that, you know, if you, from the mindset perspective, there's going to be things that you're going to work on and you might get better at for a little bit. And then you kind of go backwards a little bit, but then you keep going, right? And that's, again, having that kind of, how do you handle failures? How do you handle setbacks? So again, these are all things that are going to, you know, you have to continue to work on there.
I think one of the things people focus on the most when it's like we're talking about losing, you know, some body fat or we're losing some weight and like a health journey and stuff, it's like we look at the scale, right? The scale is never, ever going to trend just like on a really steady line, right? The scale is always going to go up and down. And so, I mean, just kind of to the point that you were making, it's like when things, you know, when the scale goes up or when stress goes up or when, you know, whatever it may be, causes you to have a spike. It's like, it's not like end all be all. It's like, how are you going to respond to that? And what's your mindset going to be around it? So I love that mindset shift there. It's not all or nothing. It's just slow, steady progress, you know?
A couple other ones are going to also be like, again, the fixed mindset, right? Where it's like, oh, hey, this is just how I am. This is how I am, right? Like that's a huge mindset thing that we need to work on, right? We want to try to cultivate that like kind of growth mindset. Again, even a perfection mindset, you know, people like, oh, I'm just a perfectionist. It's like, that's just like that's a mindset thing. Like that's you telling yourself that, right? Negative self-talk, that's another big one that I see. For me, that's been a huge game changer where it's like, you know, again, how you talk to yourself is super important. You know, if you tell yourself you can't do this or I'm always this way, like that's going to continue to show up for you, right? Lack of patience is another big one. You know, people want to see this change overnight. And it's like, look, this is going to take time. Like, again, that lack of patience is going to destroy you. Just trying to stay comfortable, you know, again, doing what's easiest for you, whether that is like, you know, again, let's take an example, a big picture here of someone who, well, hey, I'm working super hard in the gym. I'm going to the gym 5 days a week. I'm tracking my calories. That's you. But then like we look into, it's like, again, your sleep's off, all this stuff's off, but you don't want to focus on that, right? Because that's hard. Like that's the hard, like for some people, that's the hard thing. It's not, hey, you need to push harder. It's you need to get uncomfortable and work on these things that are uncomfortable to you, right? So like trying to stay comfortable is another big one. Comparison game. Again, social media, right? Like seeing other people on social media, dude. And then again, just expectations, right? Like, hey, you want to go out for drinks multiple times a week. You want to go out to dinner with your friends 3-4 times a week. You don't really want to plan your food. You also don't want to track your food, but you also want to have a 6-pack. It's like, okay, again, these expectations have to line up with the work that you're wanting to put into. And these are all mindset things that kind of pop up there.
For sure, man. For sure. Love that. Love that.
I guess too, like with the lifestyle, just to go back to that too, again, like just overall planning of your time, I think is super important too. You know, a lot of people just kind of wing it. And again, that's going to add to stress and everything. So again, just, you know, how you plan your time and, you know, kind of how you plan things out, I think is super important too. So.
Yeah, I do. Man, super insightful. Again, I just feel like it's so easy for us to get so fixated and focused on, you know, the obvious things especially when it comes to starting out on our health journey, that we don't often take time to focus on the habits that we have already and the lifestyle changes that need to be made in order to really make long-term sustainable progress. So I appreciate, man, you just sharing all your knowledge and wisdom today. Again, feel super lucky to have been able to go through all of those things with you myself. And would encourage anybody, you know, who is looking to start out on this journey, or maybe you're on this journey already. That's the other thing too, is like, I mean, I've been on this journey for a long time until, you know, Jeff and I got connected until I had a coach who held me accountable and helped me focus on the right things. It's like I wasn't making as meaningful of progress as I could have been the whole time. So,
well, real quick on you, like you again, you're in great shape. But for you, it was just like, again, to kind of take that next step, like, these were limiting factors for you that, you need to dial in to kind of take that next, kind of step with everything. And again, just easy to overlook things. And again, sleep, stress management, mindset. Like, I feel like those have been all big things. And even the nutrition, right? I feel like nutrition too, there's definitely been some things that you were tracking, like you knew what your calories were and stuff like that, but just kind of tightening that up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. So,
well, sorry, one more, and even training too, right? Like just kind of dialing that in a little bit as well too, so.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's the one thing I feel like I've always done really well, is my training. I've been really steady, consistent with that for, over a decade now. But yeah, man, it's just like, I'm always learning, always growing. And when I started training with you, it was, man, like we dialed in some things on my training that it's been insane for me to see the progress and change there in the gym as well. So it's been awesome, man. A good experience in overall. So appreciate you, dude. Really do appreciate you being on here again. I look forward to, having you on again in the future. And continuing to discuss this. This is something that, we kind of talked about my journey just a little bit, but something that we kind of played around with before we started recording was maybe diving into my personal experience, and how making some of the adjustments that we just talked about has had a positive impact on my journey. So
yeah, I'd love to do that, man.
Awesome.
Anytime.
Okay, dude. Well, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you being here, man. And look forward to having you next time.
Yep, for sure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Guys, thanks again for listening to the MFC Approach podcast. If there's ever anything, that Jeff or I could do, feel free to contact us on social media. But also, if there's topics or discussions you would like to hear had on this show, would love for you to reach out and share those as well. If you have found this impactful or meaningful for you at all, please share the podcast. Give it a review, and give it a follow on your favorite platform that you listen to podcasts on. So thank you so much, guys. I look forward to the next one. And until then, take care.